All right, so working in the garage again today, doing a little maintenance on the WK today. So this started out, I was going to change the spark plugs because it's been running okay, but the last time we had it out, it was throwing some MDS codes on the trail and then was idling a little rough, which I don't necessarily think is related to the spark plugs. I think there's something else going on with my MDS system because it hits all four MDS codes at once, which seems to me like maybe there's a bad ground or a wire shorting out somewhere. So that one I'll probably, maybe this probably won't fix. But the reason I decided to change spark plugs today is because yesterday, actually, when I was driving home, I was stopped at a light and it was doing just fine. And then so normally, like every so often, the RPM will be, come down slightly, like when it engages the air conditioning compressor or whatever, and then it comes back up. Well, I was sitting at a light and it just stalled completely out of the blue. And I didn't think much of it because it did it once before many months ago. And I was like, okay, that was weird. But then it did it again, like just a little short while later, did that again. So don't know that changing the plugs is going to help with that. But, looking online on the forums, some people were saying, yeah, make sure your plugs are good. And I mean, it's been like probably at least 50,000 miles since I changed these plugs. So may as well change them out. It's probably about time. So I want to point out too, on the Hemi, at least in this year of Hemi, I don't know if it's changed in other ones. This is a 2007, and it's very important to use the Champion copper plugs. A lot of people, if you look online in forums and stuff, will say that they've had issues with the other plugs and always use the copper plugs in the 5.7 Hemi, at least in this year range. I believe it's at least up to 2008. I don't know, they may have made changes after that. So anyway, these are the plugs to use, Champion 570. I got those off of Amazon. And another thing, if you haven't worked on the Hemi before, you may not know. So the Hemi is obviously, people know it's a V8 engine, but the Hemi actually has 16 spark plugs. It has 2 per cylinder. So to change all of them, you need 16 plugs. So that box there I got off of Amazon was all 16. So just, get them all at once, not a problem. So I should have all 16 I need. And changing the plugs on the Hemi is actually not terrible. I have the plastic cover off already, and I started working on this, but just figured I'd show. So right here is one of the coil packs, and you got another one there, another one there, another one back there. You got 4 of them on each side. Each one has 2 plugs on it, so you just have to pull these coil packs off. There's 2 10mm bolts on it. Pull that off, the coil pack comes out, and then you just take each of the plugs out and change them out. So I was starting working on that, and I wasn't necessarily going to film this, but then I noticed I got some other stuff, so I figure I'll film the whole thing anyway, just because we're doing some routine maintenance, and of course found something else. So the other problem I got is it looks like I got a leaky water pump, so I'm going to probably change that after I get done with the spark plugs. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do the spark plugs first. Probably do one of them, well, one set, 2 of them, and then probably just speed it up because they're all the same after that. So I'll get going on one of them and show you what's involved in that, and then go from there. All right, so I already did this front one, so now I'm going to work on the next one back. First thing is just unplug the coil, easy enough, and then there's 2 10mm bolts that hold the coil in. And the coil just pulls right out. And then you see there's the rubber boots for the spark plugs on there. And then there's 2 plugs per coil. You see the 2 holes there, so there's a plug in each hole. There you go. And that plug doesn't look too bad. Whenever you're changing your plugs, just kind of take a look at them while you're pulling them out. They shouldn't have any oil or anything. A little bit of black and dusty carbon on the end is no big deal. That's not terrible. That's about how it should look. And then according to what I found online, the gap on these is supposed to be 0.045. So I like to check the gap on the ones that I'm taking out too, just to see how close they are. And this just goes in there super easy, and there's even a little bit of play. So that just means, that these have worn down over time. The spark plug is going to wear down in use. It takes a long time, and it's not anything drastic, but That's why this can go in so easily. That should be a really tight fit when you're gapping the new ones, and I can rattle it around just a little bit in there. So yeah, probably a time for these to be replaced. So the spark plugs, when you get the new ones, they're supposed to come pre-gapped, but it's always a good idea to check them because, you know, in shipping this could get banged down or bent some way. I've seen that. I've seen some of them bent all around crazy. This one doesn't look bad, I mean, but it's still not a bad idea to check them just to make sure before you put them in. So I got my gap tool. That right there says 0.045. That's what it's supposed to be. So you just kind of push that in there. It should be a tight fit just like that, but it should slide in and out. And that right there is right what we want, 0.045. So it should be tight, and you should have just the slightest amount of friction like that. So that should be good. So the Hemi is a aluminum head. Yeah, I don't know if it's aluminum block or not. Anyway, where the spark plug goes in is aluminum, and and so you don't torque these down super tight. I looked at the torque specs online, and it says that it's 11 to 14 foot-pounds, so not very much at all. And that's it right there. Alright, so now I'll do the same, get that other one out, and then put the coil back on. Some of these are harder to get to than others because you have the AC lines, and right here is the shock tower brace, so sometimes you gotta get creative with your extensions to get in there. But all in all, it's not terrible to get to the spark plugs on this engine. I've seen a lot worse. This one is actually really easy comparatively. The hardest one I think is going to be all the way in the back on this side, but even so, I don't think it's terrible. Forget to hook the plug back up, or you'll not be happy when you try and start it. That's pretty much it. So I got these front two done, so that's 4 done and 12 more to go. Pretty much the same procedure with the rest of them, so I'll probably just put it on time lapse here while I get those done. Alright, so let me just show you something real quick here. This is the one that's the second from the rear on the passenger side. And as you see, it's got this plastic bracket on it, which holds like the wiring harness off of there. The bracket, it just clips on. And so if you're able to get that off of there before you take it off, it'll make it a lot easier to get to this bolt. I had to use like an open end because there's not enough room. Boy, I almost want to just cut a hole out of that. Huh. But anyway, it's just clipped on here. If you can get it unclipped beforehand, I don't know if you'll be able to or not. I didn't try because I wasn't sure what was holding it on. Couldn't remember from last time. And now I got my gloves caught under there. But if you can release these clips and pull it off beforehand, might make it a lot easier. That side's easy. That one's easy. And then that front one. There we go. I don't know how easy that would be with it still on the vehicle though, because obviously I have it off, so that makes this a lot easier right now. But there you go. If you can get that off, that makes it a whole lot easier to get to this back plug. And you know what? While I have it off, I'm just going to cut a hole out of there. because I don't see why I even need that. I'm just going to cut that right there. Alright, so there you go. You can see I just cut a little piece out of this thing, and that should allow me to get a socket on there real easy. So if I ever have to take that, that'll make it a lot easier to put it back on, and if I have to take it apart again, it'll make it a lot easier to get to. And I don't see why that would hurt anything. So. Alright, got the spark plugs all finished. Guess I'll start it up, make sure it still runs. Alright, everything seems good. I got a check engine light on right now, but I'm thinking that more than likely that's because this right here is not hooked up. That's the little intake air sensor. Goes on the bottom of the air box, which I didn't put back on. So anyway, I think that'll probably be, I don't know, I didn't read it, but I'm assuming that's what it is. Alright, so I guess that was successful. New spark plugs. Hopefully that'll help it run a little better. Alright, on to the next thing. So, if I didn't mention it already, this is a 2007 Jeep Grand Cherokee WK. Has the 5.7 liter Hemi engine in it. And so what I'm working on next is going to pull out the water pump, because I was in here changing the spark plugs and I smelled antifreeze. I've been smelling antifreeze when I stopped it for the last few days, and looking underneath it, there's antifreeze like on the bottom of the engine, like on the front of the oil pan. And it's hard to tell where it's leaking from, but it's got to be the water pump, because, well, it doesn't got to be, but I'm thinking it's the water pump because that's right, that area, and it leaks down the front of the engine. So I'm going to pull the water pump out and get it changed. I've done this before, but I don't remember. I don't think I have to take the radiator out, but I think I have to take the fan out and everything else off the front of the engine. So I'm just going to start pulling things apart and see where I get. Alright, so to get the belt off on this engine, right here is the tensioner pulley, and you probably can't see from here, but down in the side of that tensioner pulley there's a square hole that you can fit a ratchet or breaker bar into. And so right down in there there's a square hole, and then you can pull that to the side and get the belt off. Now maybe you can see where I have that ratchet. Like I said, it's hard to see, but yeah, there's a, not ratchet, but breaker bar. So there's a hole, square hole right there, and that allows you to pry this out of the way, just like that. And that loosens up the belt. Just enough to pop that off. Usually there's a belt routing diagram. Oh well, guess I'll have to figure that out when I put it back on. It only goes on one way, so just have to figure it out. take the tensioner pulley off next, I guess. It's this tube that goes in there, so it has to come off. So it's hitting this plug for the sensor. I think that's the engine temperature sensor, coolant temp sensor. So I'm going to pull that plug off. Alright, so I got that plug off and I got that thing out. That should give me enough room, hopefully, to wiggle it out around there. Now I'm going to try and get the rest of these bolts out. They all look like they're 13 millimeter. Well, that's got to come off apparently. 'Cause it's in the, I mean, I don't know if it has to, but it's in the way of me getting a wrench on that, so it's gonna. So most of these bolts on here so far have been metric. This one right here is 5/8. I don't know, maybe it's 16 millimeter, but I don't have a 16 millimeter handy, and I do have a 5/8. That one actually might not need to come out. That is actually not a part of the water pump. It doesn't look like. Looks like the water pump's here, so I didn't actually need to take that one out. Alright. Can you see all that liquid in there? I don't know how well you can see it, but that is all wet back there. So underneath that pulley is pretty much the bottom of the water pump, and everything underneath it is all wet. Over there, unless it's just squirting out the end of that hose, which I guess is possible. I don't know. I'm going to pull the water pump out and see what it looks like. Pull the idler pulley off too, because I don't know if that's goes all the way through or not, but I'm going to take it off because I need it out of there anyway. Alright, so there are a total of 11 bolts on there. There's 10 that go all around, and then there's also that really long one that goes through here, which I got sitting up there. So anyway, 11 bolts total that hold that water pump on, it looks like. Assuming I didn't miss any others. I think I'm being helped with that. There we go. So you gotta kind of sneak it around and then somehow fiddle it out through somewhere. I don't know. I think it'll come out through here. Or it might go out through the bottom, I don't know. Don't remember. I'm gonna get it through here. So that one, this one right here that I didn't necessarily need to take out, definitely helpful to have it out though, because otherwise you catch on it. And there, I can put it out right past that. So anyway, there's the water pump. Honestly, it doesn't look terrible, but they never do. I don't feel like, I mean, there's a little bit of play in that bearing right there. That could be it. Yeah, you can't even see it or hear it, but I can feel it if I move that. And there shouldn't be any play there. You can kind of see right there, see those streaks right there? That's leaking out of this, right out of here somewhere. And so that's what's going bad. There shouldn't be any liquid right there. And that wasn't from what I just did, because that all dumped out on the bottom. So that has got to be, it was leaking down that. So anyway, I'm going to take it to the parts store and get a new one. All right, so I got all my new parts. Got my new water pump. And since I had it apart, I figure I may as well replace the thermostat too, so I got a new thermostat. And then when I pulled the thermostat housing off, this thing is really old and pitted up. You can see how that is not smooth at all. And so that will make it so it doesn't seal very well. So since I had that open, I figured I may as well replace that too. So got a new one of those. Should be a lot better. And then thermostat gasket as well, because you know, anytime you replace the thermostat, you want to replace that gasket as well. So now that I got all my parts, now I just need to put this thing back in. And as they say, installation is the reverse of removal, so it's not super complicated. Just all the bolts that you took out, put them back in, and then torque them down to spec, which I'll have to look up. Alright, so I got the water pump back in. It's in there. New water pump, both bolted in. Got the new thermostat housing on. Thermostat's in there. Got the gasket on there. Normally, I might put like some RTV in there, but since both this water pump and this housing are new, the gasket should be all that's needed. So hopefully that won't leak. So now I just need to get my belt, which is way down there somewhere. Need to get my belt on, and I got to get my hoses back on. So that's the bottom hose, and then the top hose. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I wanted to point this out about the idler pulley. When you're putting the idler pulley back on, there's a little shoulder. So there's this big washer type thing which is connected to the bolt, and then there's a little shoulder on the inside of that, and you need to make sure when you crank it down that shoulder lines up with the bearing. So you don't want the pulley like hanging down like that and to crank it down like that, because then it would be only cranked down on that little outside piece, and then it would move around a lot. So make sure when you crank it down all the way that the bearing on the idler pulley actually gets onto that shoulder and is in there good and solid. And with the tensioner pulley, there's this little post right here that you need to line up in that hole right there. So it won't go in really any other way. Just make sure that that's lined up, because you don't want to accidentally put it up here, because that would be all wrong. So it will go in maybe another way, yeah, if you go too far, but it should line up. There's a little hole right there that it fits right into. So there you go. You can see the post right on the back, on the side right back there, and the hole that it goes into. It just goes right into that hole just like that, and that's what holds the spring tension in. And also, one more thing, don't forget to pop this little tube back in. It should go down in there. You see how it's up right now? It should go in there so that is flush. There we go. Okay. And then one other thing you don't want to forget, if you did like I did and disconnected that coolant temperature sensor, don't forget to plug it back in either, or you will throw a code and your engine will be unhappy because it can't tell the coolant temperature. Okay. All right, I think all that I have left is the belt and the upper hose and this little bracket. So that little bracket, that little bolt, I put that back in already, but there's that bracket that goes on there that holds, that bracket is what supports the air box. There's a little post on it, so. And this right here will go back on there. This little just pushes on there. So I think next thing I'm gonna do is put the belt back on, and I need to look up how it routes because there's no diagram and I don't remember. I think I found the image of the belt routing diagram I was looking for, and I'm glad I looked because this is not at all what I would have guessed. I didn't look at it before I took it off. I probably should have. But anyway, there's what it looks like. Not sure how well you can see that, but it goes clear around the crank pulley on the bottom, back around the tensioner, and then all the way over to the alternator, and then up over the top. Yeah, so it's a very interesting routing pattern. But I found this diagram in a couple of places, and I'm pretty sure that is the correct one for the 5.7 Hemi. So I'm going to go and try and get this all hooked up. Alright, that wasn't too bad. Got the belt on there. You can see it routed all around over there, over the tensioner, down below, to the side, up around, over the water pump, and back. It's crazy, that's all that runs the water pump is just that little bit right there. But they definitely got some serious tension over there on the alternator, wrapped almost completely around it. That's probably why they ran it that way, just to make sure that, you know, had good tension. But anyway, I've never had a issue with the belt slipping, so I guess whoever designed it knows what they're doing. Alright, so now I think I just need to finish off a couple things. Push this back on, put that bracket on, put this top hose back on, and then I think I'm ready to fill it with fluid. Alright, so I bought the concentrated, which you have to dilute yourself. Whenever you're diluting antifreeze, always make sure you use distilled water. You don't want to use tap water or anything else that might have, you know, because the minerals and impurities in the water aren't good for your cooling system. So you always want to use distilled water if you mix it yourself. Otherwise, you can just buy the pre-mixed stuff. I like to buy the concentrated stuff because you mix it 50-50 and you basically get 2 gallons for the price of this, which is ends up being cheaper than the pre-mixed stuff. What you do not want to do, though, is take the concentrate and dump it in at full strength. That is not good. I don't know what it'll do. It won't cool well, that's for sure. It needs to be, you know, mixed properly, and I usually do a 50-50, and I think that's what the pre-mixed stuff is too. So if you're unsure, just get the pre-mixed stuff, and then you can dump that right in. Alright, well, it looks like the water pump replacement was a success. Starts up, doesn't make any weird noises, not shooting coolant anywhere, so that's a good sign. I'll take it for a test drive probably sometime tomorrow because it's kind of late. So I'm just going to finish buttoning everything up. I got to get the air cleaner, the air box back on and get all that back connected, but that's pretty much it. I think that's going to do it for tonight.